What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Combine here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. I am your co-host, Hussam Patel, along with my other co-host, Eric Smith, here on the Scouting Combine. Eric, we had some fantastic news drop for the Miami Dolphins today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think the Dolphins are ever going to do anything that makes every fan happy, but almost all Dolphins fans should be really happy to know that Jalen Waddle is going to be a Dolphin for the next 5 years on what I felt was a pretty, friendly deal in terms of what the contracts in the future are going to look like for wide receivers. So I thought that was a really good move for the Dolphins today.
Yeah, for sure. This show is not going to be specifically just for Jalen Waddle, but we wanted to touch upon it. Looking at the contract numbers and everything, I feel like they're getting him at a bargain, especially since they extended him. He'll still play out his fifth-year option and in his fourth-year deal this year. His money will start in 2026, and by that point, $28.5 million per year will be below top 10 wide receiver money. You can count on that.
Very true.
You can definitely count on that. So, Eric, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so today we're gonna take a look at some of the stuff that the Baltimore Ravens did on defense. Anthony Weaver, our new defensive coordinator, has already stated that he plans on running a similar defense. It's not going to look exactly like what Mike McDonald did in Baltimore, but I think a lot of the concepts they use can still be looked at and kind of see how it will fit within the scheme or within the personnel that we have for those schemes.
For sure. And we'll go ahead and get into the very first play right here. This is up against the Rams. The Rams are in empty formation. Sorry, not empty. It looks like the camera was blocking the running back. They're over there in shotgun in 11 personnel. And it looks like the Ravens. Let me go ahead and run the clip real quick. Let me do the playback speed to 0.5. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 down linemen with 1, 2 linebackers and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defensive backs. They're essentially in nickel formation. All right, Eric, what are you seeing on the defensive line right now?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing here is that they have that one linebacker kind of walked up in that almost a nose type position. He's not going to rush on this play, but it's still not a big jump to go from this to, those nose rushing looks that Chop Robinson was so good at with Penn State. As we get into the play, another thing that I really like about this is that they're not just sending guys on a traditional rush. On both sides, you've got twists of the tackles and ends. I know that Brian Flores' defense, for example, was well known for having the highest blitz rate around. But part of that was that it was a 5-man front with 2 outside linebackers, 2 defensive ends, and a nose tackle. So if none of those guys dropped, it was considered a blitz. But they were too often just, running straight forward and easy to diagnose. Anytime that you throw in twists like this, especially doing 2 of them, it makes it a little more complicated for the offensive line to diagnose.
Right. This defense has a lot of layers to it, especially on the defensive line. They have a lot of twists. They have a lot of stunts as well. And joining us is our special guest, Alfredo Artiaga of 3 Yards Per Carry Off. How we doing today?
Doing good. Just tuned in right now. I'm listening. I like your work. I like what you guys have been doing. Eric has been killing it,
That's
and
awesome.
I'm happy to contribute.
Of course. So we're talking about obviously the difference between the Brian Flores style of defense and the Anthony Weaver style of defense, as Eric was mentioning. This style of defense that Anthony Weaver brings, specifically him being a former defensive coordinator with the Houston Texans, and he was the defensive line coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. This defense has layered twists and layered stunts to it compared to just 5-man straight line rushes. Alf, when you were studying this and when you're watching the Baltimore's defensive line film, what stands out to you besides these layered twists and stunts?
I really care about how they play their coverages, and this is a great example. If you could pause it right here, you could pause it, pause it right at the snap. If you can't, right there. If you pause it right at the snap, if you're the quarterback, if you're Matthew Stafford, and this is a testament to just really good play by Matthew Stafford, you're not getting any indication whatsoever from the corners. First of all, you're on the right hash, right? So if you're on the right hash, it stands to reason that one safety, if they are in a cover 2 shell, if they're in a 2 deep shell, it would stand to reason that one safety would have dropped down already, probably the one on the play side, right?
Right.
They're not. They're all
No, they're not.
they're actually just perfectly parallel to each other. The cornerbacks are not showing leverage either way. The linebacker's into a dead drop. The fill linebacker is into a dead drop right down the hash. The scrape linebacker is just staring at you right on the hash as you're dropping back on the hash, while Kyle Hamilton had dropped down into the box.
It looked like he was blitzing, and he comes back out to cover.
Yeah, so they're giving you nothing, and this is right at the snap. Like right here, decisions are being made by Matthew Stafford. They're giving you absolutely nothing. Now, give it just 2 counts, and I'll show you what happens. Let it go. Stop. I think that's Marlon Humphrey up there, right? He gives up. He kind of gives up the ghost that it looks like it's middle of the field open, and it's some type of quarters coverage or quarters box. As it turns out, it is like a quarters box because you see that the linebackers are beginning to space. As you had to scrape right before you had him on the hash, and now he's off the hash. While the I think that's Patrick Queen, I think, right? While Patrick Queen was in a dead drop, and now he's flaring out to take away the intermediate zone. And then down here, 21. What's 21's number? Who is that? 21.
Not so sure. That does not look like Ronald Darby to me. Not sure who that is.
And you could see
Anthony Stevens, maybe?
Yeah, that is Anthony Stevens, yes. You could see that, man, it's a count past the snap when they finally give it up. And even when they do give it up, it looks like it's middle of field open. So all your leverage throws are there, but they're really not because it's like a box 6 coverage, right? So you have the linebackers taking away the slants.
Right.
It's just perfectly orchestrated, and it takes a lot of discipline to be able to drop on these things. And for fans that go to training camp this year, when you watch you watch them in what looks like 7-on-7, but it's not really 7-on-7. You see that they're kind of jogging. That's their installs, and that's when they're trying to time up their coverage looks. Man, this is so tricky, and this is going to be up to Anthony Weaver to pull off. And if he can pull this off, this is going to be a really, really good thing for the Dolphins because this is a new wave. This is a new wave of defense. You don't want to really declare a lot of things pre-snap because quarterbacks. And when I say this, and I just got off of Twitter, so you know what a mess that place is. Everybody thinks everybody there sucks, right? 20 quarterbacks in this league, at least 20, that will absolutely eviscerate you if you start declaring your coverages early. They just will. It's just something that will happen to you. So if they can implement something like this, that would be great. But that's a great piece of film right there. Watching the number 1 defense actually execute a coverage damn near flawlessly.
Right. So this coverage actually I found through Match Quarters is called 2-roll. What happens is basically the defense is in either a single high coverage and it looks like cover 1 or cover 3, or sometimes they can be in a 2 deep shell, and the safeties go back and they roll into deep halves basically. So you're going to see the corners, the outside corners, they're going to squat, especially the one on the field side. On the play side, the corner is going to swipe and play cover 3. The nickel, which was Marlon Humphrey in this case, it looks like he's rolling up and then he's going to come right back to be here on covering this flat route. What the linebackers are going to do with Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith is that they're going to try and build a wall. That's what Patrick Queen is going to do. You're going to build a wall on the play side, and the other cornerback, whether it's the nickel or the will linebacker, they are going to build a wall on the field side as well. It's basically triangle coverage. And what Roquan Smith does is that He is the pole runner. Basically, he's covering the middle of the field. I'll go ahead and go back to the clip one more time so you guys can see the coverage and how it's working as well. All right, you have Marlon Humphrey at the top. You have Anthony Stevens. It could be Brandon Stevens if I'm not wrong, but I'm not so familiar with Baltimore Ravens players. You're going to watch how Marlon Humphrey, he's going to squat on the go route, and you're going to watch Brandon Stevens. He is going to try and take the deep third of the field as well. He runs with his man and stays in his zone. You're going to see Kyle Hamilton right here as he's moving. He's going to move back, and he's watching if anyone's coming over to the flat right here. Stafford's not even looking at the flat. So Hamilton is looking at Matthew Stafford. He's like, okay, he's looking at middle of the field. You can see Roquan Smith. He went all the way back to cover the middle of the field, and everybody is covered. There's at least 1 to 2 defenders covering deep, and you have this lone flat player. Now, Eric, I'm going to run the clip one more time. Can you explain to me what the defensive linemen are doing on these stunts and twists?
Yeah, so in this case, you can either have the end or the tackle going first. In this case, they have the tackles going first. So the idea here is that both the defensive tackles are going to slant to the outside and try to pull those guards towards the outside, leaving the middle open for the defensive ends to loop back inside. And it's not uncommon to see somebody, coming unblocked. I think we'll see. But if you get those offensive linemen on different levels, it makes it tough for them to pass off the blocks, and you can easily get a free rusher with this.
Right. All right. Let me share this one. All right. As we go over to our second clip, this is in cover second. I got to say, man, Eric, thank you for pulling the 49ers games clip because honestly, this gives a little bit of a hint as to what the Dolphins training camp is going to look like between the offense and the defense. This type of style of defense that Anthony Weaver brings, it's a bit similar to Brian Flores's, but it's also different because what Mike McDonald did in Baltimore is that he took all the goddamn terminology that Rex Ryan had and previous Baltimore defensive coordinators had as well, condensed it and made it simple so that way it's much easier to communicate. And I feel like Mike McDaniel reaching out to a guy like Anthony Weaver, who studied under Mike McDonald the last 2 years, he's going to give this and take this to Tua and apply it because this defense is now going to be one of the most used defenses in the NFL. And you give Tua something like this to look at in training camp and practice every single day, he should be able to pick it up quick, kind of like how he did under Brian Flores' defense and Vic Fangio's defense, who is pretty much the majority of the NFL at this point. Right, Alf?
Yeah, pretty much. And it's everybody's fond of saying that, Fangio's defense is like, what everybody has adopted. But, there's always somebody who comes along and tries to put put a new spin on it. And Mike McDonald's defense is kind of the new wave. And Miami's getting in on, while they got in at the tail end of the Fangio cover 6 revolution, they're coming in basically in the infancy stages of Mike McDonald's revolution on defense. And, it's a defense that's predicated on disguise and a lot of the same pressure five, what's the word I'm looking for? Principles that Vic Fangio's defense is built on. It's the old 4-2-5s that Missouri ran in the late 90s in college. But the stuff that they're doing coverage-wise, there's a lot of stuff there that's Tampa 2-ish from the 90s. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that's, Fangio-esque as far as cover 6 with a very large bent on cover 3, which I believe is the wave of the future because it's pretty simple when you build.
We're going back to the Legion of Boom era style of
pretty much, because when you're building a team in the cap sport, you're going to have to try to make do with what you can spend money on. And if you have three really, really good secondary players, what type of defense would you want to play? Would you want to play a lot of quarters? Would you want to play a lot of Tampa 2? No. You play Tampa 2 when you have fast linebackers. You could get to after the quarterback with your ends. Okay. You want to play quarters when you essentially want to hide guys on the perimeter. When you have a lot of talent at cornerback and safety, you want to play cover 3 because you want to put a lot on their plates. And that's what we're going to see going forward. And Miami has the personnel for it, that's the good news. The bad news is that this is very, very difficult to pick up. But, that's what OTAs and all this time is for. That's why everybody was saying, oh, what kind of defense are they playing? Well, we don't know. Second of all, they're in a classroom. All of this is all classroom stuff right now. And you're going to begin to see it come training camp. But it's exciting. It's exciting because it feels like Miami is finally on the cutting edge on defense after they've been kind of lagging behind all these years.
All right, Eric, this is a 4-man front with 3 defensive tackles. Tell me what you're seeing and what you're expecting out of this pre-snap.
Yeah, well, so one of the things I liked about this clip was the fact that they're using 3 defensive tackles and then the lineman on the top of the screen there. I think it might be Jadeveon Clowney, but it's a defensive end outside linebacker type. And I think I saw that Baltimore only used 3 defensive tackles, less than 5%, but it's still a package that's in there. It's something that Anthony Weaver's familiar with. When we're looking at our personnel and, possibly being a little light to start the season on the edge rushers, it's nice to have a package like this in there. And it's going to create some different matchups. Starting to go through the play here as we're watching that defensive end who's really a defensive tackle on the bottom there. The right tackle is going to overset here because he's used to more of a speed rush, and he's going to end up getting like the Reggie White hump type move, and the defensive tackle is just going to toss him on an inside move, which is something that he's probably not used to seeing as much from, the smaller outside linebacker defensive end type players.
All right. And if we're talking just how the offense is based, both Eric and Alf, this is basically an H-choice concept. The play basically has Brock Purdy looking to his right first for Brandon Ayuk on a choice route, then to Christian McCaffrey on the front side on a choice route out of the backfield. And then you have George Kittle on basically a dig route to McCaffrey's side itself. I believe this resulted in an interception.
Yep. And one of the things I really like about this is on that interception, watch the defense. These guys are excited about playing with each other. Other than those 2 corners that kind of hang back, everybody is getting back into that play. And as there's, kind of a tackle being broken there, you've got 9 defenders around the ball. And those guys just love playing together, and looking forward to seeing that in Miami too.
Right. And if we are talking about coverage itself, let me go ahead and share this tab. Are you guys able to see?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's cover 6, basic standard cover 6. You're playing quarters, basically on one side of the zone, and you're playing 2 on the other side of the field, where your linebackers and Kyle Hamilton are basically looking at the hooks, the curls, and the flat routes as well. Go ahead and rerun this clip right here as we get back to it. So here's what's going to happen. The Ravens being in that cover 6, and especially with Jadeveon Clowney coming up by the right tackle of what you mentioned, Eric, it kind of throws the right tackle off. So Purdy seeing pressure in his face, and he tries to throw it. What Purdy is supposed to do is he's supposed to throw it over to Brandon Ayuk, because Ayuk is the first one to settle into the zone. But that pass rush from Jadeveon Clowney, no, that's Travis Jones, actually, defensive tackle Travis Jones from Connecticut. He's able to throw Purdy off, and that's what leads to the interception itself. So it's basically what the coverage looks like on the back end, and the pass rush has to get there overall. Alf, on a play like this, how consistent does the communication have to be with all 11 players involved?
Well, you could stop it right here if you can. If you could stop it right there, just stop it there before they declare the motion. This is a predicate of what Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan do on offense. Because right here, if you're a quarterback and you just run this play static as is, you really don't know what they're running right here. It could be a disguised quarters, it could be Tampa 2, it could be damn near anything. But this motion that they're bringing into where Marlon Humphrey is going to get him to declare his coverage a bit early. And this is an instance where the play call defeats the defensive play call, but a player just defeats another and makes a play. Like, I'm actually surprised that that the 49ers had such a hard time with this, because if you could run the play, keep running it. Now you're going to see this motion. If you see this motion, notice how you're getting that lean, and now look what is happening to Humphrey. It's you could, like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Once you have that cornerback show his leverage up top to the play side,
Right,
and you have Marlon Humphrey drop on the field side, he knows it's cover 6. He knows where the holes are going to be. So this is actually one of those plays where, Kyle Shanahan actually, like, if they're watching film on Monday, Shanahan's going to look at Brock Purdy and saying, how can this happen to us? Of course, he's going to look at
you
the
got
right
benched
tackle.
that game, so yeah.
He's going to look at the right tackle, and he's going to say, how can you short circuit our offense after we have the perfect play call for their coverage?
Right.
So yeah, this is more about cover 6 rules being defeated by motion, but it's mostly about a player just making a play, and one defensive player defeated an entire play call, a coaching staff, a quarterback, and all that talent on the 49ers.
All right, Eric, you know more about this than me, and you know a little bit more about offensive line play than Alf on this as well. Sorry, Alf, I have to bring up my co-host like this, but this entire defensive line and the way the defense is played, it dictates opposing OLs and what the protection has to be, where they are going to be sliding, if they are going to be backpedaling the entire time as well. So, Eric, take it away for us, and what is this play about?
Yeah, so in the last clip, we talked about personnel and what happens when we don't have the edge rushers. Well, this is the opposite side of that. When you have a dude and you want to get him matched up one-on-one, I don't know what the down and distance is here, but it's a long down and distance type situation, and that gives the defense the freedom to line up in a way that dictates how the offensive line is going to block this. You got 3 down linemen to the top of your screen, so to the offense's right, and you have 1 defensive end in like a wide 9 type look on the left. You're almost always going to get a 3/4 slide to your right to block this, meaning that 4 of your offensive linemen are going to go to the right to handle any stunts that might happen with those 3 guys up top. And your left tackle is one-on-one. So when you look at a Bradley Chubb or a Jalen Phillips, getting them into this type of alignment against a less athletic offensive tackle, it's going to be a winning situation for the Dolphins almost always. But yeah, just being able to get into a down and distance where you can put 3 guys to one side and leave a huge open gap there to create that one-on-one scenario. That's just the way that defensive lines can dictate, the protection that the offensive line is going to be in, and be pretty confident in the way that they're going to combat that.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the next play of dictating offensive line rules. Ooh, give me 1 second. Where is it? Here it. Ooh, come on. It should come up now. Okay, here we go. Sorry, guys. All right. This should be it.
Yeah, this is it.
All right, perfect. Basically, this is another example of using the alignment to dictate protection as well. Let me slow it up for you. All right, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so in this looks, you've got 6 guys right up around the line of scrimmage. Any 6 of those could be your pass rushers, and you've got your 5 offensive linemen, and then Christian McCaffrey is actually going to be part of that protection as well, which should create a 6-on-6 matchup. But as this play starts to go through, the number 2 and 3 defenders from the left side are linebackers that actually end up dropping back into coverage, and that's the side that McCaffrey starts to. But then the extra thing is that Kyle Hamilton's up there in the slot, and he's going to come from the top side of this video. So they're, getting McCaffrey to look right first, and he does a decent job of getting back to the left side there. There's a flag that comes in that ends up getting called for a holding there. But by showing those 6 defenders, getting the offense to kind of declare that their 6 blockers are going to account for those 6 defenders, then you drop 2 of those out and bring another one. It just creates a mess of numbers that makes it difficult for the offense to adjust to.
Right. Like Brock Purdy right now, he's scrambling around and he's trying to buy time to make a play, but he ends up rolling back to his right, throwing a pass back to the inside to Kittle, who was covered by Marlon Humphrey. And, George Kittle he could basically run straight across to open grass or come over to the quarterback diagonally in a straight line. But he takes a couple steps to the inside before working back as the ball gets to him. And, the pass is on the outside shoulder, and Hamilton is able to catch it. Alf, we have a question here. What is your hope that we can have a defense that is on par with last year, roughly?
I think you want something better than last year. Last year they were 22nd in points. I really care about. Look, yards are important because they dictate the tempo of the game, but points above all are more important. They were 22nd in points. You want a defense that's going to be. You want to allow less than 3 touchdowns per game. It's as simple as that. You allow 3 touchdowns per game, you have a bad defense. That's also the marker for offense. Dolphins averaged 3.5 touchdowns per game. So they're well above league average as far as good offenses, meaning top 10 offenses. On defense, I expect them to be much better than they were last year. What are the expectations? Depends on the first 8 games. You could expect reasonable health come week 8, meaning Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips should be back by then. And if they are, then you really have no excuses. You want to have a top 10 defense this coming year. You want to average less than 20 points per game, giving up.
All right, thank you, Alf. And before we move on from this play, Eric, you brought up the point. This is something that Brian Flores used to do a lot. But rather than having the inside linebacker mug up the A gaps right here, here with Anthony Weaver's defense, they slide the defensive tackle over right here or here and have they put the linebackers on the backside of the A and B gaps. So over here or here, and they drop back into coverage. So that way it messes up what the offensive linemen are going to do. Now, how do you coach offensive linemen? You're seeing them mug up now in between the B's and the C's. You're like, okay, how am I, what is the protection going to be? How am I going to set it off? Can I protect the quarterback? Like right here, what is the offensive lineman supposed to do pre-snap?
Yeah, so like I said, this is a 6-on-6 type protection. The protection is going to be dictated on where they're going to put McCaffrey. So in this case, it's kind of a more of a slide left type protection because McCaffrey is going to the right, and then McCaffrey makes a late adjustment there. But it goes based on the numbers, and then you have to try to adapt to it. What happens post snap? It takes a lot of communication on the side of the offensive line to be able to have a 6-on-6 and then just have the picture change completely post snap where 2 of those guys are gone and a new guy that wasn't part of that original 6 is
Right.
now part of the pass rush. So it just comes down to a lot of reps, a lot of communication is the only way that you're going to be able to, contend with something like that. And the same thing goes for the defense. When this play breaks down, one of the things that I really liked about this was that this starts out as a zone coverage, but as soon as Purdy starts scrambling around, you see almost everybody attached to a man, and it turns into a man coverage in the scramble drill. And we've gotten burned on that so much in the past. So it's clearly being coached well in Baltimore to be able to stay with that. And then the one guy who doesn't have a man to attach with, I think it was a linebacker or defensive end towards the bottom here that drops out.
Right.
You can see that he's immediately getting back into the pass rush there, that he's not just sitting back there in space. So everybody has a job, and that's really fun to watch.
Yeah, and coverage-wise, this is basically a cover 3 sim pressure. Up at the top all the way up to your top left is man-to-man. You have, I think, Geno Stone, who is going to be taking the curl and the flat. You have Kyle Hamilton, who looks like he's going to be covering Debo, but he's actually blitzing as well. You have Patrick Queen, and I think that's Michael Pierce, who's mugged up into the A-gap. I believe that's Michael Pierce. He's going to be the mid-hook cover guy, defensive tackle covering. Remember when Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer used to do that with Flores? Then you have Patrick Queen, who's going to be taking the curl flat, and you have Kyle Van Noy, who's on the hook curl itself. Marlon Humphrey is going to be the deep outside third, and Brandon Stevens is going to be taking the mid 1/3. Now, a cover 3 sim pressure itself, the defense runs a cover 3 fire zone pressure. 5 guys who are going to be dropping back with Kyle Hamilton blitzing off the edge, mugged up linebackers and Roquan and Patrick Queen, and Kyle Van Noy dropping off the line of scrimmage to go into the underneath coverage zones. Now, you said it yourself, Eric, the communication and the play style by the secondary is perfect. Like, when Brock Purdy gets to the top of his drop, everyone is perfectly covered, and there is nowhere to throw the pass. Like, take a look. Where is he going to throw it to? Who is he going to throw it to? Nobody. And it all comes back to communication, man. We're going to talk about communication here, and this actually was a touchdown that the Baltimore defense gave up to the Rams. It was a one-on-one play right here. I'll go ahead and do it. Eric, why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
Yeah, so like you said, this is a touchdown, but it's not a communication breakdown like we've seen so many times. It's just one of the defenders getting beat by one of the receivers. But as this play starts and the motion starts to happen, watch the secondary and just the way their hands are going. You can see them talking to each other and adjusting to those motions to make sure that there's nobody that's running free. And then, you get an unusual look where both your defensive tackles are the ones that are dropping into your hook to curl zones there, letting the big guys have some fun. But I just thought that even though this resulted in a touchdown, the thing that stuck out to me was just how well the secondary is communicating in terms of making sure that all of the receivers are, covered well.
Al, if we talk about this defense being very complex itself, and sometimes we see a receiver running wide open because the players get the coverages mixed up. What are the motion rules on this play, and did Baltimore do the right thing in sorting out this coverage?
Yeah, they did. This is just really, really high-level quarterback play, and you could stop it right here. He puts that's Cooper Kupp, right? Okay.
Yep.
He has Cooper Kupp in motion, so like he should have the sombrero already. And pre-snap, what Stafford is looking at is, you got a safety over the top, and guys are in man up. You don't really have much to the top, but you're going to see what he recognizes immediately, and this is really high-level quarterback play. Take it right up to the snap, right at the snap, right there. You can stop it, okay?
Right here at the snap.
Right here at the snap. he knows because he sees it right away. He lost a number in coverage already. So he knows he has man up top. And remember, he knows the route combination the defense does not. So he knows that there's a bow out being run by Cooper Kupp. So he knows it's going to be wide open because it's going to be man to man. And this is Cooper Kupp. This is a triple crown receiver. So he should have it. And that's where he was going. It's as simple as that. This is very high level quarterback play. Once the Ravens declare their numbers are done, you see right there, he knows that it's man. He's throwing that route because he knows that's the route. You know, it's as simple as that. He knows for a fact Cooper Kupp is going to be one-on-one. It's the right route against the right guy. It doesn't matter if it's Deion Sanders back there. It's one-on-one with Cooper Kupp on a bow out. He's throwing that route. So that's really, really good quarterback play. That's how you teach it in the classroom, especially as far as coverages. You know, as far as how they block this rush, it's really boilerplate stuff. You know, you're blocking the man nearest to you. You're letting the guy who's farthest in the rush go free, and this is just really, really good quarterback play. That's how you teach it. As soon as they declare, you know, those numbers are right there for you. You're throwing the one-on-one route to your best wide receiver.
All right, Eric, we know the Dolphins drafted Chop Robinson, and Baltimore's defense did a lot of stand-up no stuff with their edge rushers and linebackers and even defensive tackles. Do you think this is going to be a staple for this Dolphins defense now that they have edge rushers and Chop Robinson and Mo Camara, and when they'll get Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips back?
Yeah, I think they'd be crazy not to use that. I mean, once you get all those guys healthy, it's a role that Chop Robinson used at Penn State and was really effective in that way. I know the 3 yards per carry guys had talked about the way that, you know, Chop may not get the sack, but the pressure that he creates from this type of look, you know, really opens things up for other guys. And, you know, if you can get, you know, Chop one-on-one with a center that has to account for his you know, his quickness, then that's going to be a mismatch a lot of times. So I think that, you know, in this one, he doesn't blitz. He ends up mirroring the running back. But like we said earlier, like just having that in your playbook that you've got this pre-snap alignment, even if the Ravens really didn't send that stand-up nose often, it's a pretty easy thing to add to it. And I think that, you know, it's definitely something that Anthony Weaver should be looking to use Chop Robinson for once we get, you know, all the bodies back and healthy.
Yeah, because the Dolphins have a bunch of different type of edge rushers. You have, you know, the tool guy in Bradley Chubb, and then you have, you know, he's the tools guy. He's the guy that has the deep pass rush bag, right? And then you have Jalen Phillips, who's just, you know, one-on-one killer. That's why he's so good as a pass rusher, as a 3-tech. And I think he's going to be really good when he comes back from injury, when Chop Robinson is going to be on the field, because Chop Robinson is really the one-of-a-kind guy that they have on the edge on this team. He's a space creator. So it's entirely possible, and I really do mean this. Let's say he plays, and I think he's going to play a lot of snaps. You know, if he's healthy, I'm figuring 600 snaps for Chop Robinson, okay? If he's healthy. All right? It's entirely possible that he'll have 40 quarterback pressures and have less than 10 sacks. And some people will say, well, but he only had 7 sacks. Was that really a great season? I would say yes, he had 41 quarterback pressures. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think that that's entirely possible because he is unique to this scheme. Because you have the tools guy, you have the guy who's just a one-on-one killer, and Jalen Phillips. They don't have a space creator on the edge. They do now, and I'm interested to see, you know, what he does for the guys on the inside, because they do have a serious speed element on the inside. Because yeah, you lost Christian Wilkins, who's an all-world talent, but you did sign some guys whose forte in the pass rush is how quick they get off the ball, like Neville Gallimore. Even Benito Jones is pretty good as a zero, okay, getting into gaps. So I'm interested to see how Chop Robinson, you know, how his speed and his space creation correlates to the pass rush inside to this collection, this buffet of defensive tackles that they signed.
All right, the final play here of this podcast is figuring out how to defend the middle of the field with your new linebackers and Jordan Brooks, David Long Jr., who was here last year, and Anthony Walker Jr. as well. Defending the middle of the field up against the Shanahan-style teams, which includes the Jets twice, the Rams, the Packers, 49ers, and Texans. The last four, who I just said, amazing, amazing offenses and can kill you on the deep and intermediate routes, which the Dolphins also got killed in last year under Fangio's system. And this is really going to be based on Jordan Brooks itself. We have Roquan Smith here, but essentially you can somewhat replace him with Jordan Brooks. And I got to ask you, Alf, what kind of sometimes amazes me is that Mike McDonald took Jerome Baker to Seattle from Miami, and the Dolphins basically took Jordan Brooks from Seattle to Miami, and it's just basically a swap of linebackers. Like, who won? Like, who has the better linebacker for this scheme?
I like Jordan Brooks, but I think Jerome Baker. The problem with Jerome Baker is he's not that he's scheme specific. He's task specific. He's not a fill linebacker. Never has been. Never will be. And his film since he's been here has shown he is not a fill linebacker. So when you play him in a fill role, reading two gaps, he's not going to perform as well. He is a scrape linebacker. He's Patrick Queen. That's what he is. So I think Mike McDonald saw an opportunity to recreate Patrick Queen at half the cost and took it. But I think Jordan Brooks has more versatility. He can play in both roles. He can play fill and he could play scrape. And that's what's going to make him so good. That's why some people went when they signed Jordan Brooks, they were like, oh, there's your Jerome Baker replacement. And David Long would just be the middle linebacker again. So, they're back into their own roles. No, I don't think so. I think that they're going to flip-flop those guys. I think they're going to flip them. That's going to make their defense a lot more versatile because they're going to play guys with non-specific tasks and non-specific roles. They're going to be filling all roles, just like the Ravens did last year. Although, truth be told, Patrick Queen is very, very, very similar to Jerome Baker. He's much more of a scrape linebacker than what Jordan Brooks is or what Roquan Smith is. Roquan Smith could play pretty much anywhere. He's actually a really good flats player as well. That's another thing that Miami has, that they're going to have two linebackers that are really good flat players. And that's one thing that Jerome Baker is also really, really good at. So I think Mike McDonald just looked at Jerome Baker as an opportunity to recreate Patrick Queen, and I think it was a smart signing by Seattle. Although I don't know if you saw the report today, but he has an injury and he will miss all of OTAs until training camp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's still rehabbing that injury he had.
All right, Eric,
what do you see?
Eric, what are you seeing on the defensive line?
So, you got a 4-3 type look here. You have Kyle Hamilton as your third linebacker type in this. One of the things I liked about this play again was the communication. As you start rolling through it, you see the safety that started as a single high look. He's looking over there. He's waving at that other safety to get back. And I think this play we have the end zone angle also. And you can see the front seven, you can see them communicating and shifting as well. So I think that, you're getting a pretty basic look, single high look to start with, but then they do a good job of adjusting. There was something they saw, or whether it was a designed shift or whether there was something in the offense that caused them to audible, but you just saw them communicating well and getting into a different look, and everybody's on the same page.
Right. And when you're taking a look at this post snap, everyone's covered intermediate and deep as well. You have the safeties staying back. You have, the digs and the seam route coming here from Ayuk. You have Patrick Queen right here who can make a play on the ball to Ayuk. You have Roquan Smith who literally went super deep to cover the intermediate route here from Debo Samuel. He's basically in the catch space, the catch radius. And Purdy's looking at like, well, crap. I can't throw to the middle of the field. It's pretty much covered. Who's my next guy? He takes the flat over to George Kittle with minimal yardage on this play. Uh, we talked about the Dolphins last season giving up points and yards as well. If they give up little yards compared to the big yards, I mean, that's a win. Then you get into the third and longs, maybe the third and sevens, the third and sixes, the third and fives. Then you start to unload your pass rush plan on those third downs, and you know you can cook up a variety of different looks. You can have three defensive tackles on the field. I'm sorry, three edge rushers, outside linebackers on the field. You can do the stand-up nose stuff with Chop Robinson, Mo Kamara as well. And as you get to the later parts of the season, you're going to make these Shanahan teams start guessing. And, the Dolphins play these Shanahan teams towards the later part of the season when Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips should be back.
Well, what's interesting about this particular play is that the play sometimes it just works this way. Your play call is bad, for the coverage, and my God, this is a mess. And you almost wish you would have had one kind of check here because you don't even want to check to a run. Look at these numbers that he's facing in the box, and look at the gap coverage. You got a guy in the A, you got a guy in the B. You have your 3 tech, you have your 5 tech, and then you have your 1 shade. You essentially can't block this with split zone, okay? So you stick with the pass play, and then when your guys get out in coverage, they're all bunched up over the middle with 8 million guys in the passing lanes. So, yeah, this is one of those instances where the play call comes in and you got defeated. One good thing that Miami has, and I wouldn't say that it's defense proof. It's not play call proof. But one good thing that Miami does have is that they tend to get wide much more often than Shanahan does, and that's going to isolate players on the perimeter instead of whatever this is, which is essentially just having a bunch of people run into the intermediate zone where everybody else is covered.
Right, like you could have like Tyreek Hill here, Jalen.
Are you gonna have? Yeah, are you gonna have?
Malik
Are you
Washington
are you just gonna have McCaffrey? You gonna have McCaffrey flare out, or Achane in our
Yeah, you
case.
can have Achane flare out. You have Tyreek Hill come up over here, flank out into the sharp motion, go up a little bit deep end. Then
Are you gonna run? You're gonna run Jonnu Smith, who would be in the Kittle role, also on a flat route. So you're gonna get that defense wider, and that's gonna give you the space to be able to throw those digs over the middle. But man, this play call is bad. Like, this is one of those. This is one of those that once you send it in and you see the snap, you're like, okay, that didn't work. Just throw it away. Actually, Purdy does a great job. What did they get? 2 yards on this? 3 yards on this?
I think 3 yards.
This is actually like that's one of those you pat yourself in the back like you made chicken salad out of chicken shit on this one.
Yeah, I thought the defense did a really good job of rallying here. Another good, coaching type point that you can see that when that ball is completed, that Patrick Queen, I think it is there, really triggers and takes off after I think it was Kittle that caught the ball. But you can see that the other defenders that are coming are playing with good leverage. I think it's Marlon Moore on the outside, has that outside leverage. You see another linebacker coming from the inside. And just having that confidence that your teammates behind you are going to play with the right leverage behind, Patrick Queen allows him to, really trigger and get after that play because he knows that even if Kittle avoids that tackle, he's not just running in space. He's got teammates there to handle it.
Exactly. All right, guys. This was pretty informational for myself as well. I learned a lot and leads me to believe during training camp, there's going to be a lot of new installs for the offensive side of the ball to deal with this type of defense that a lot of teams are going to be running out. Let's say what you have Seattle doing it. You have D'Amico Ryans does like a 50-50 between Fangio and a 50-50 of his style as well, which has the cover 3, cover 6 sim pressures as well. There's
Dennis Allen.
Say that one more time.
Dennis Allen in New Orleans.
Yeah, you have Dennis Allen in New Orleans, even though the Dolphins don't play the Saints as well. Ejiro Evero he's with the Panthers now, right? Or is he still with the?
Yeah, they kept him. I think they did keep him. Yes. So
yeah, you have Ejiro Evero who runs something similar as well. So again, they're at the infancy of this, but if the Dolphins offense can get ahead of this, and this defense, and if Anthony Weaver stays as the defensive coordinator for the next 2 to 3 seasons, it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be really fun to watch and analyze as well.
Yeah, I will tell Dolphin fans that go out to training camp this year, when you see that they break up into units early on, and then they mesh their linebackers and the secondary together, and you see that they're just jogging around with coaches orchestrating things against air. Pay attention to that, and take your eyes off of Tua throwing deep balls to Tyreek when Ramsey's covering him. Watch the second team defense as they do the install. It's going to look boring because it's going to look like guys are just like half walking the places, but they're essentially showing you the defensive playbook. Like, watch that. That's what's fun to watch.
Yeah, of course. Alf, thank you for joining. Eric,
no problem.
Did you learn a lot?
Oh, absolutely. Every week I'm learning stuff on this podcast, and always fun to learn different stuff like the coverages that we went over today. Definitely, room to learn there for me. So always learning stuff and enjoy it.
Of course, stick right here with us on the Scouting Combine and the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Go ahead and do subscribe to the OnlyFins Discord, brought to you by the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast. You can find them discord.gg/OnlyFins. Technically, it's $2.99 a month, but they advertise it as $3. You can get a lot of news and information from Alf, CK, and Simon as well. A lot of informationals. And then they have a super sub for $25 a month where you can individually talk to them. You can talk to them about coverages and specific news and rumors that they receive about the Miami.
And we drop videos on there all the time. And when you think, okay, so they're just dropping, videos of, the Cowboys Dolphins game. No, I put in personally a 32-minute sizzle tape on Neville Gallimore. So if you want to watch Neville Gallimore rush in a 3-yard box for 32 minutes, you can do that on OnlyFans.
Of course. As always, y'all stick with us here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Go Fins.
See you guys later.